All right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's installment of the Regional Report. This is, of course, a GPEC virtual series. Now, today's webcast will feature experts discussing the increasing global demand for semiconductors and Arizona's broader position and opportunities within this space. We're going to talk about data tied to GPEC's new semiconductor industry insights report. We will be highlighting that today. I want to thank you so much for taking the time to join us this afternoon. I know there's more logging on right now to this webinar. My name is Eric Sperling. I'm with STN. If you're unfamiliar with STN, we are a local media company based right here in downtown Phoenix. We do have a streaming network. That streaming network is available on the App Store or Google Play. All of our shows and segments are dedicated to community growth, to local leadership. We have some great shows on there dedicated to diversity, equity, inclusion efforts, sustainability, as well as homeless and affordable housing. So if you're in this market, I highly encourage you to download the app. And of course, you can check out GPEC President and CEO Chris Camacho. He is featured several times there on the STN streaming network. All right, today's webinar will run for approximately 1 hour. I'm going to walk through some housekeeping items if this is your first time joining us. Audience members are muted and without video. This webinar is being recorded and will be shared on the GPEC website and social media sites. You may submit questions using the Q&A feature down there at the bottom of your screen, but due to time constraints, we may not be able to get to all those questions. Should you experiencing any technical difficulties, try logging out, logging back on. That tends to fix it. We do invite you to share this information on social media. And when you do so, please feel free to tag GPEC and use the hashtag #GreaterPHX together. Also, be sure to join GPEC and Partners Wednesday, November 17th from 9:30 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. for part one, you see it there, of Convening the Community. That is a two-part series discussing a long-term vision for Greater Phoenix. We're talking about pillars of an innovation economy, economic imperatives for future competitiveness, and opportunities for inclusive economic policies. You see the dates and times there on your screen. All right, let's talk about today's panelists. We have 4 speakers joining us today. We'll be hearing from Chris Camacho, just mentioned him, President and CEO of GPEC. Peter Cleveland, he is the Vice President in the Legal Department of TSMC. Angela Creedon, Arizona Public Affairs Manager with Intel. Edward Shober, Executive Advisor to CEO and EVP, Head of Strategy and Business Transformation over at EMD Electronics. Let's kick things off with you, Mr. Camacho, President and CEO of GPEC. As I mentioned, as Chief Executive, you have been instrumental in the region's technology and advanced manufacturing sector growth, led the attraction of more than 460 companies during this tenure, creating nearly 85,000 jobs and $24 billion in capital investment. I know you're excited. We've got a great audience today. Share with us some of what's going on in the semiconductor space.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Eric, and thanks to the esteemed panel we have today. Really elated to talk about this particular topic as we're seeing semiconductor news all over the headlines, both domestically and globally. And as many of you know in the audience today, that semiconductors are the backbone of this digital and knowledge economy. You go out to any retail store or trying to buy e-commerce goods, you're seeing that the disruption in semiconductors globally is very significant, and it not only impacts each of us in our traditional buying patterns, but certainly all of the electronics, vehicles, the next generation technologies are anchored and enabled by the semiconductor sector. So one thing also interesting that's been a faction of kind of this global supply chain disruption relating to COVID has been the fact that this is the world's 4th most traded product. And so when we talk about supply chains, that generally rolls off the tongue for people. But in today's terms, you're seeing chips and packaging and sets builds that occur all over the world. And so for us to get our next generation electronics products, there's a certain process to that has global implications. So we're going to talk about a little bit about the highlight of this report that we put together. The semiconductor sector, if you go to the next slide, thank you, it dates back in Greater Phoenix all the way back to the late 1940s. And even then, 1940s, I don't know exactly what the population was, but I'm sure it wasn't too many people as we were advancing towards the advancement of air conditioning. But the first commercial high-power transistor, which is the sexy way of saying, the car radios that were in your vehicles at the time, was created here. And that dates back, obviously, when Motorola was building capacity here. And over time, we were seeing the beginning stages of Greater Phoenix evolving to become one of the top destinations for semiconductor capacity. And so there's a lot of inputs that go into why we have evolved since the late 40s to where we are today. But certainly, capacity relating to workers. So the semiconductor precision manufacturing capacity in STEM. We're also seeing our proximity to California and the APEC regions, where a significant number of these chips are being produced globally or for global means today. And by the same token, you're seeing advancing technologies, that are revolutionizing communications through wireless, advanced telecom, autonomous vehicle testing and adoption, electric vehicles, which we're seeing pretty mass adoption across the country. The projections are just in EVs alone that will surpass 30 million electric vehicles over the next 10 years in terms of adoption in the United States. Those are materially influenced by chip production today. So this report is really exciting in that, not that it's new to Arizona, or we're not new to the semiconductor sector, but a lot of the headlines of late was certainly TSMC, and we're so excited to have them participate today. Along with Intel and other companies in this region, we've seen this be a mainstay legacy sector. And what excites people like me that are at the helm of really shaping the architecture of this sector for our future, along with our governor and many other partners, this is really Arizona's time to shine and really play a significant role in the global semiconductor sector. And so we'll unpack that a little bit further here in a moment. So let's go ahead and advance to slide 3, please. Slide 8, I guess it is. So as you can see, we are a top 4 market in the United States in terms of the density of workers working in semiconductor related operations. There's 75 companies that operate here in Metro Phoenix that are in the semi sector itself. And so, when you look at just the sheer investment capacity, and again, I've been at this for 13 years in Metro Phoenix, we haven't seen a year like we saw in the last 12 rolling months. And what was hard to explain to a board of directors when you're in the midst of the most significant pandemic we've experienced in our lifetime, and yet the capital investment committed by TSMC, we're talking billions of investment, and other companies in the market that are creating very significant job outcomes. So between TSMC and Intel alone, we're talking 5,000 phase 1 jobs and over $30 billion of capital investment. So if you look ahead in the crystal ball about what's to come, our pipeline alone in totality is 40 plus semi manufacturers and suppliers. So these are companies that produce chemicals, that do the packaging, and really the entirety of the supply chain is now active in our pipeline. So 40 plus companies representing 10,000 potential jobs and over $45 billion of new capital investment. So I'd like to say we're just getting started, but if anybody saw the CNBC program that went live 2 weekends ago that really showcased TSMC's project, what a great way to illustrate the brand continuity between a lot of the speakers we have here today. So again, I'm really elated to have them here and talk about the opportunities for the market, but certainly some of the challenges and cost pressures that the U.S. presents to these companies. Let's go ahead to the next slide. So one thing I think that's interesting is I spent time with Secretary Raimondo, the U.S. Secretary of Commerce, and previous Commerce Secretaries. We talk about the imbalance of market adoption in terms of consumer demand, coupled with each country's domestic capacity for producing the products. And so you see here in the United States, pretty strong demand for these products, and yet the current capacity in terms of production capacity is under 15%. Which is pretty startling to your layman out there when we look at the 1990 level of just under 40% of the world's capacity back then was being produced in the US as a novel technology leader the United States was, and I would still argue is. However, production capacity has really shifted to places like Taiwan, Korea, China, and so forth. So you see the distribution across Europe and certainly the APEC region where we've seen a very significant concentration of the fabrication capacity. And so, again, what's ahead is where we are working, I should say, with a number of these fabless enterprises across the domestic sourcing network. They want to see more and more foundry capacity, of which, again, our mainstay companies are now providing here in the US. Okay, so let's go ahead. So I'm going to finish up with just a few slides here. that one of the key ingredients to the success of any market, but predominantly for the semiconductor market, is advanced technical talent. So as we were in the support process with Intel and TSMC and many other firms, we found that the quotient of software, computer information system experts, engineering, overarching engineering capacity, our location quotient strong, our job capacity strong, but even more importantly, the projected jobs that are intended to be developed here is one of the fastest growing markets in terms of projected percentage change from 2020 to 2025. So 17% change over that time horizon is projected. So hence why we were staunch advocates for the New Economy Initiative to support our 3 state universities, which was very focused on extending and expanding not only engineering capacity of great length, but also the STEM career paths for our P through 20 system. Okay, go ahead. And so to finish up today, what is also exciting is, we're all on the front line seeing the advancement of 5G and wireless deployment. AVs are all over our roads, dating back to 2015 when Governor Ducey advanced an executive order that enabled Waymo and other technology companies to test on our roads, and also EV adoption, as I talked about. And even then, even in the advanced material space, we're seeing some of these homegrown companies like NXP, as well as ASU for that matter, with single layer material development. A lot of the applied research density that has played to our strength is hitting that next level generation. So material sciences continuing to evolve in our region, and also again, companies like NXP here in Chandler are also playing into the important segment of the value chain with capital equipment. So we're just really excited about, again, the potential of today, and even the number of companies in the pipeline that I do believe will forever change Arizona's identity for being a major player in the global economy. So lastly, my last slide here, before I kick it back to you, Eric. One of the kind of shepherded approaches we've taken with our legislative body and our leaders at the Capitol has been really to ensure they grasp the needs of the new economy level applied industry. And so these advanced industry companies are in a global fight for STEM and engineering talent. At the same time, we see the CHIPS Act, which is going to be again, debated in Congress in the fourth quarter of this year once we get past this major infrastructure bill. And companies we're talking to will state that, but for CHIPS Act being passed and the $52 billion committed, we would not have a competitive environment to induce domestic and international companies in the semiconductor value chain to invest in the United States. There's just a cost paradigm that's untenable. So again, that's a very important and I would say critical element, not only to national defense, but if we want to continue to advance consumer products, we need to see those kind of investments in policy enabling opportunities here in the country. And then lastly, the good news as well, we're seeing employment centers around the region. So, for years we saw Chandler and the southeastern part of our region and Phoenix as well, see a lot of success around mainstream manufacturing. What semiconductor and the industry has done just in short order in the last few years has enabled us to create multiple employment parks across the region to add to jobs equity, more infrastructure capacity and access. And so we're going to continue to double down on the preparation that we need to ensure that these companies have the appropriate technical talent, they have the right modern infrastructure, and they have the right partner, as we'll continue to advocate for programs both at the federal and state level to ensure that these companies are successful in the United States and successful here in Greater Phoenix. So thanks, Eric, for just a few minutes to give the introduction to this report. I want to, my hats my hats off to Drew Callow, who was on our team leading the research effort on this endeavor and interfacing with a lot of the key leaders in the semiconductor sector that gave us a lot of real-time feedback as to what's exactly going on in the space. So with that, I'll kick it back to you, and I'm very eager to hear my peers talk through their experience in working with us, but also what they're seeing on the horizon here for Metro Phoenix and the state of Arizona. So thanks again, Eric.
All right, Chris, we appreciate it. Great job as always. Fantastic perspective information. As you mentioned, let's get into the discussion now. You've been talking about TSMC. Let's bring TSMC into the conversation. We're going to welcome Peter Cleveland, Vice President of the Legal Department for TSMC. Peter focuses on driving tech industry consensus on issues involving China, IP protection and enforcement, trade and export controls. Peter, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. I'm excited to hear what you have to say.
Great. Thanks for inviting me and TSMC. We really appreciate being here. And to start, I'd like to express the company's gratitude to someone like Chris Camacho, who has worked with us for years. GPEC has done a fantastic job telling the narrative of Phoenix and Arizona. TSMC is a pure play dedicated foundry. We build the digital engine inside of laptops, phones, supercomputers, cars. We're everywhere. All we do is make those semiconductors. We're very, very focused on that. And we've done it mostly in Asia. We've been in the United States for 15, 20 years up in the state of Washington. But a couple of years ago, we felt like we needed to diversify our global footprint. We make 11,600 products for 500 customers. We're extremely successful, but we needed to manufacture in other parts of the world. And GPEC and the governor and the mayor and the congressional delegation were superb in telling us about Phoenix and all the assets that are there. This report is first class in terms of describing why Phoenix, in terms of its capital efficiency, in terms of its existing companies, in terms of its resources, in terms of its people, that's the most important thing. The people were the best place for TSMC. So we came to the doorstep, a very small team of us in 2019, and Chris has done a superb job. He came to Taiwan, made a long trip with his team to keep telling us about why Phoenix would be a good US home for TSMC. And that's exactly what's happened. We announced after 2019, after our trip to Phoenix in May of 2020, we announced a $12 billion facility in Phoenix. We bought 1,200 acres up Interstate 17. We broke ground in April of this year. We poured concrete in July. We'll install tools in 2022 in a very incremental, careful, smart way. TSMC moves right ahead. We are on time, on track, and on schedule in Phoenix. And we're deeply grateful to the policy officials that have worked with us in partnership and collaborated with us. Chris was just mentioning Gina Raimondo. She was on the phone with us this morning, very, very early. She never lets up. She's a honey badger. She's incredible in terms of driving foreign direct investment into this country, into a place like Phoenix, where we will spend billions and billions and billions of dollars. We'll create new jobs. We'll create huge new personal income. We will create very significant local economic development. We will, with that 5 nanometer product, which is the fastest silicon on planet Earth right now, we're going to do great things in Phoenix. And we deeply appreciate the assistance from the public sector and the public officials. We couldn't do it without them. And the back and forth discussions with the local officials, the city officials, the state officials, and federally have been superb to date. So I look forward to talking a little bit more about TSMC in the call here, but so far we couldn't be more pleased about how well we've been received in the Valley of the Sun.
Yes, well, welcome, Peter, and we're excited to get into some Q&A in just a few moments. I do want to bring in Angela Creedon now to the conversation, Arizona Public Affairs Manager for County, City, and Higher Education for Intel Arizona. Previously, Angela was Associate Vice President for Innovation Zone Development and Corporate Engagement at Arizona State University. She has also served as an East Valley Community Development Manager for APS. Angela, welcome to the conversation, and we'll kick it over to you.
Well, thank you, Eric, and thank you to the entire GPEC team for having me here today. As was talked about, the report that was just mentioned is phenomenal. We love the work that's being conducted by GPEC, and we're certainly grateful that you invited us here today. Many of you may and may not know that we have a new CEO at Intel, relatively new, Pat Gelsinger, and he is really leading the transformation of Intel. He has an abundant amount of energy and very, very ambitious goals. So it's an exciting time to be at Intel. And so I hope you just capture a little bit of his energy in my conversation with you today. It's no secret that Arizona is Intel's US manufacturing powerhouse, and our high-tech advanced manufacturing operations and innovation are absolutely vital to Arizona. The world's becoming more digital, and everything digital needs semiconductors. So the digitization of everything is accelerated really by four superpowers of AI, pervasive connectivity, cloud to edge infrastructure, and ubiquitous compute. They're driving the sustained need really for more semiconductors. It's going to double the market to $1 trillion by 2030. And we believe we're the only company with the unique scale and breadth to lead. Intel develops and manufactures technology that powers data centers, hundreds of millions of smart and connected devices worldwide. It's Intel's tech that powers our world's digital infrastructure, allowing us all to connect, invent, and advance. And I'd like to give you just a little bit of history of how we got started here in Arizona. In 1980, October of 1980, the first silicon wafers came off our production line at Fab 6 in Chandler. And that really marked the start of what is now Intel's largest manufacturing site. Now, 4 decades later, so we've been here for 40 years, Arizona is now home to 12,000 of the brightest minds helping Intel define the future of technology. So we're employing over 12,000 people as it stands today. Intel's state-of-the-art fab facilities are among the most advanced in the world. The scale of the modern day fab operation is absolutely stunning, with multiple large buildings linked together with clean automation systems to form factories. We have roughly 1 million square feet of clean room space. So this last March was an exciting time for us. We announced that Intel would invest $20 billion to expand our Arizona manufacturing capacity with 2 new fabs. So this investment will create more than 3,000 high-tech, high-wage Intel jobs, 3,000 construction jobs, and support an estimated 15,000 additional indirect jobs to our community. So this is the largest private investment in the state of Arizona when we made this announcement. And once complete, our Ocotillo campus in Chandler will have a total of 6 factories manufacturing leading-edge semiconductors. And Intel has already invested over $30 billion. And we believe this new investment will just continue to help advance the ecosystem of innovation that we've helped to create in Arizona and increase US semiconductor manufacturing capacity. Intel's Arizona operations are also home to research, design, sales, and support teams, as well as our assembly test technology development organization. So as you can tell from our recent announcements, Intel's really excited about the future. We're also in the midst of this corporate transformation. That's an exciting time for our company. And it's seen it grow into a data-centric business, capturing an increased share of the revenue. So we're really excited about our future in Arizona. When we complete our 2 new fabs, we will have over 15,000 jobs in the state of Arizona, exceeding $8.6 billion in annual economic impact, and we'll continue to spend billions annually with Arizona organizations. So we look forward to continuing to help to advance a local ecosystem of innovation.
All right, Angela, thank you so much. Stick around. We have Q&A coming up. I do want to remind our viewers, we do have closed captioning available at the bottom of your screen there. You can click the closed captioning button, and that'll let you see word for word what's going on here today. Lastly, want to bring in Edward Shober. Ed is the executive advisor to the CEO and EVP of Strategy and Business Transformation for EMD Electronics. EMD Electronics enables the semiconductor industry to make electronic devices more powerful by providing highly innovative material-based solutions. Ed, thank you so much for joining us. How are you today? And excited to hear what you have to say.
Fine, Eric. Thank you very much for the introduction. Thank the GPEC team for the invitation and ability to participate today. We all know who Intel is. We all know who TSMC is. Some of us may not know about EMD Electronics, so I'll take 5 minutes to explain that. I'll introduce the company and myself, provide a supplier perspective as we're a supplier to these 2 former presenters and their companies, and future thoughts on the industries, which is very bright, by the way. If we move to the next slide, this is just an introduction on myself. I've got nearly 35 years of experience in the semiconductor industry, primarily with Air Products and Chemicals, then into Versum Materials with our headquarters that we're over on Warner. there in Tempe, right off the 101. And for the last 2 years, we've been now owned by the German Merck, which I'll describe in a little bit. It's interesting. I've had a lot of experience with TSMC and Intel over the years, from even when TSMC first built in the southern part of Taiwan and Tainan. I was a project engineer back in 1995, 96, 97 during that construction, and spent a lot of time working on Intel projects as well in Chandler, Albuquerque, and Ireland and Israel, as well as I was the chief operating officer of our Tri-Mega joint venture that we had between Air Products and Chemicals and Kinetics. So some good history there. Moving to the next slide, as the slide states, we're a bit unique. You know, while we're known as Merck internationally, that's not the case in the US. So you see the disparity in colors there. In the US and Canada, we're known as EMD Electronics, which is the high-tech materials business of Merck KGaA, Darmstadt, Germany. It's a 353-year-old company with a very rich tradition. As you can see, we employ nearly 57,000 employees in 66 countries globally, and we're part of the DAX 30 here in Germany. If we move to the next slide, and again, I'll be brief, we're made up of 3 business sectors, and specifically it's healthcare, life sciences, and electronics. And you can see the leadership areas we bring to those 3 individual sectors, which again compose Merck KGaA, or EMD Electronics, as it's known in the United States. Moving to the next slide, we're among the top leading material suppliers to the electronics industry globally, and one of the most relevant material suppliers specifically to the semiconductor industry. We possess demonstrated focus on innovation, as evidenced by over 15,000 patents, and our annual investment in R&D, which is the highest, both as a percentage of revenue and in aggregate dollars in the electronics materials industry. You can also see our size based on the other metrics. Sales is depicted in euros, so it's nearly $4 billion in our electronics division, and we have 7,400 employees globally. Moving forward in the slides, you know, we've been involved in the electronics materials business for over 100 years now. That's what laid the foundation for us. It started in display, so it's liquid crystals that go into all displays, including televisions today. But today, we're the leading supplier to the electronics and semiconductor industries worldwide, offering that broadest portfolio of semiconductor and display materials to advance those next generation electronics that both Peter and Angela spoke of. We at EMD Electronics are the company behind the companies advancing digital living. We've transformed and also repositioned our business, making a strategic shift towards the electronic materials market. Today, the semiconductor business is one of the growth engines at EMD Electronics and Merck KGaA. And when we look forward to 2028, we expect it will about triple in size the business sector compared with 2014. If we move forward to the next slide, this slide evidences the acquisitions which we've made since 2014 in the electronic materials space, resulting in innovation partnership and integrated solutions provision to the customers today. Moving forward to the next slide, the slide quickly shows where we participate via our offerings in the semiconductor space. We participate in all 6 key process steps in the fabrication of an integrated circuit, and also provide enabling delivery equipment for our materials offerings and fab services that stay behind and work daily in the customer's fabs as well. Going forward in the slide deck, we move to the next slide. You know, with a well-balanced and broad technology portfolio, industry-leading R&D, and global production network close to our customers, the electronics business sector has become one of the most relevant suppliers of materials for the semi and display industry. And it's on track to further expand this position. You can see based on the global map, we have 35 plants globally today in all of our industry's hotbeds. To the next slide, we'll make some commentary based on our latest Capital Markets Day, where we met with our analysts. We introduced our new growth platform, which we call Level Up. It's an unprecedented market growth opportunity that's ahead of us. Personally, I haven't seen this tremendous of a growth opportunity in my nearly 35 years in the semiconductor market. To address this growth and level up, we're considerably extending our global production footprint and boosting R&D and innovation. Our highly attractive growth markets, such as semiconductor materials, are expanding at an increasing rate. By tapping into this momentum, we're significantly enhancing our growth prospects. We plan to invest significantly, more than 3 billion euro in innovation and capacities up through the end of 2025. We'll continue to heavily invest close to our customer in research and development, in leading edge material solutions, and we plan to spend more than 2 billion euro on long-term fixed assets. As you can see by the Level Up Growth Program, it focuses on 4 mutually reinforcing key priorities: scale and technology, both which need to be close to our customer; our portfolio enhancement, both in breadth and depth, as well as capabilities. Peter mentioned it up front. Every business is a people business. The strength of our people helps us to be successful in this market. Further investing in these 4 areas builds the foundation of the electronics business sector for our more ambitious growth, in conjunction with a strong demand for electronic materials, particularly semiconductors. Moving to the last slide of content, the digitization of our world as we know it and the proliferation of data into all elements and aspects of our lives is truly taking place. We experienced it firsthand during the pandemic, where we changed the manner in how we work, how we educate our children, how we buy as consumers, and how we entertain ourselves. Semiconductors are becoming ubiquitous across all elements of our lives today. The exponential data growth with a compounded annual growth rate of over 30% further validates the fact that electronics has evolved into the backbone of modern society today. At EMD Electronics, we've realigned our portfolio towards these future growth trends. Accelerated digitization and the growth of data drive the need for more and higher sophisticated semiconductor chips and displays. Today, we're optimally positioned to leverage our key strengths, empowering our customers to make smaller, faster, more energy efficient, and more sustainable devices in various applications across the entire data sphere. So that's an overview, as we as EMD Electronics are the company behind the companies you've heard already today, advancing digital living. Thank you.
All right, Edward, we appreciate it. And we appreciate you joining us. You heard him mention, here in Germany, I know it's late evening there for you. So thank you so much for being on the call with us today. All right, let's get into some Q&A now. And Chris, let's start with you, because I know, listening to Peter talk and you going to Taiwan and telling Peter, why the greater Phoenix area would be a great destination for TSMC. So what sort of intentional planning went into that to ensure that our region and state is desirable for semiconductor companies?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, Eric, it was understanding our current cluster. And so for years, we've been, not only understanding the Intel and certainly EMD and many other companies and their footprint here. But we know that futurist companies want to understand or want to support a market that has intentional planning in mind. And so as our conversations with TSMC over the last several years manifested, ultimately it came down to, did we have a talented labor market? Or were we producing engineers and STEM individuals educated in areas that were in high demand, coupled with a reality that the markets were changing and the modern infrastructure needs in terms of electric grid capacity, water availability, which we'll talk about here in a moment. All of those attributes were critical for our continued success. And so the one unique facet about Greater Phoenix that I put on par with or put up against anyone else, not only are we great at speed to market, but we're great at scale. And so scale means we're able to bring people not only from our local market, but from around the country. It's a place that people want to be, coupled with scale, meaning we build infrastructure for the future. And that dates back to the original inception, Eric, of, maybe I'll just touch on water here briefly, because I get that question a lot, is how are we building these kind of plants in the desert? We're an arid climate with 8 inches of rain per year. We're only about roughly 30% reliant on the Colorado River. But when I get into the conversation about water, our 4 people before us were deep into water planning. And that's what led to the position we're in today. So again, without boring everyone with facts and details, the 1980 water management plan that was put in place enabled and required a 100-year water supply mandated by our cities. So to pull a permit to get a plat, you needed a 100-year water supply. Today, because of conservation practices and some transition of agriculture, we're using less than 1957 water consumption levels. It's hard to fathom, but we've been at water, and I would say that's been our supreme advantage in the big picture of growing an economy, has been how, again, our foremothers have been planning for the future growth that was to occur in Greater Phoenix. And so we can talk more stats about the CAP, the tribal nation partnerships, or city planning, the closed loop systems that these companies have, and the reuse that many of these companies have, even TSMC and Intel that I am familiar with. While they use a fair amount of water, it's recycled, reused, re-injected, and so we're in a position, to continue to grow high-wage jobs, but anchoring ourselves with these kind of companies that are continuing to grow and expand here.
Yeah, thanks for that, Chris. And you're spot on. That was the first question to come in on the Q&A regarding water conservation. So I'll give each of the panelists an opportunity to weigh in as well. And the specific question coming in that was sent over: what advancements and or plans are in place to alleviate water concerns considering the ongoing drought? So Peter, you want to weigh in there?
Sure. First of all, Ed, thank you for all your great work for TSMC. I did not know that you had been in Tainan, and you're one of our great suppliers, and thank you for all that. And your slides were much better than my slides. So very, 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 very impressive. Yeah, Phoenix has so many good resources, and I'll get to water here in a second. First of all, the thing that attracted us was the land. Working with Sandra Watson and the Commerce Authority there, finding the right plot of land, 1,200 acres. We like our elbow room. We like a lot of space. Phase 1 is well underway, but we needed 1,200 acres, and the state and the city and the locality, they found what we needed. On water, I think Intel tells a very good story here too. Angela can address this. Well, we have a tremendous conservation record. We'll use 14 million gallons a day at that first fab. It's a lot of use, and we recycle a tremendous amount of that, up to 90%. And so it doesn't create a negative impact on the allocation, which is big anyway. So I think Chris covered this issue. There's a little misnomer here about water being something that's of concern for us. It's not. Power is tremendous there. When Chris and Sandra and others got us exposed to APS, and Jeff Goldner, I think, was the CEO at the time, a very sure, complete and sophisticated grid system was critical, because these wafer fabs that we run are massive in size. And so power was perfect there. And then, getting back to the people issue, we met a couple of years ago with a guy who was the dean of the engineering school at ASU, Kyle Squires. And the STEM talent is there, not just ASU, but across the state at all these colleges, from Northern Arizona University to Maricopa community colleges. We want those bumper stickers from Arizona colleges in our parking lots. And that's the type of people we're hiring. That's the direction we're going. And then the final point, I think the regulatory structure, and I think this has to do with the governor and the mayor, is welcoming. We don't want a lot of red tape. We don't want problems. And when Chris had that map of the country up on his slide deck, we went to all those places. I mean, this was a multi-billion-dollar investment in Arizona, letter grade A+ on that front. And then finally, I think what's so good about Phoenix is it's the migration pattern. People love this city. This city they've been growing. People want to come work there. They want to migrate in, and you want your people to be happy. And Phoenix is a pretty happy place to live. So those were some, that dovetails with some of the things Chris was saying.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. And Angela, Peter teed you up there, talking about the area, talking about water, talking about the region. I'll let you weigh in there.
I appreciate that opportunity, because Intel has been working extensively for many, many years with the city of Chandler, and we have a long-standing commitment to water issues. We've worked to establish and construct a new reclaimed water source to support the recent expansion. We have a guiding policy, a global water policy, to be net positive water use by 2030. And in Arizona, we returned and restored 95% of our Arizona fresh water use to our community and to our local watershed. So I think we have a great water story to tell because we have taken such an extensive approach to working closely with the city of Chandler, working closely with local community groups. Our water conservation efforts are phenomenal. Back in the 90s, we partnered with the city of Chandler to construct a water treatment facility. It's called our Ocotillo Brine Reduction Facility that removes the salt from the water. We have the 12-acre on-site water treatment recycling facility at our newest fab, which is Fab 42. 52 and 62 are our upcoming fabs. And then we have a number of initiatives that we've taken, everything from funding nonprofits that have water restoration projects. We have restored more than 600 million gallons of water just in 2020 alone to support our Arizona's water resources. So we take water very, very seriously. We know that everything that we can do to improve our water use is something that we'll continue to focus on. The state of Arizona, the agricultural industry uses about 75% of the water. So we've taken on some crop conversion projects just to restore the water. So we look at it and try to take a holistic approach to ensuring that we're conserving and recycling where we can.
Thanks, Angela. Edward, I did want to give you an opportunity. Did you want to weigh in on this?
Yeah, I think just the common theme here and the key word is sustainability. We live in a world that we need to leave better than when we found it. And I think all corporations around the world have that passion and focus right now. And you can see it evidenced by what I've seen Intel do in the past around wastewater and energy. Similarly as TSMC, when I read that CNBC referenced article, it speaks to 90% of it being pumped back into the aquifer. And then I also know it from our work at EMD Electronics. So the last 8 years, up until last Halloween, Peter, I lived in Taipei, Taiwan. So I spent nearly 8 years in Taipei, and 3 of those years, either Versum or Merck, as it's known in Taiwan, won the Supplier Quality Award. Usually 10 awards get handed out by TSMC. There's one level of threshold. Usually 6 go to OEMs, 4 to go to material suppliers. And one of the reasons we won one year was for a clean that reduced the need to rinse it and treat the waste effluent and also heat the bath in the plant. So we reduced energy, reduced wastewater treatment, reduced the use of water overall. So the sustainability theme is key and prevalent in our industry. It's a hot button for all of us, as you've heard in some of the prior discussion.
And Eric, maybe one more thing just as it relates to water, because again, I think a lot of the questions we generally receive are on the front end about water use for the fabs. But I think also it's important to know that as we're adding workers, adding residents, there's a number of augmentation efforts in place where I'll give you one example, and there's many, but Salt River Project has been working closely with the Department of Reclamation on modifications to Bartlett Dam, which would increase the storage capacity of 100,000 acre feet, which is going to be supporting, hundreds of thousands of new people. And so this isn't just, I should say it is about conservation, but it's also about augmented capacity and realizing what I often get in the national landscape. When you see the tier 1 shortage declaration that occurred it was probably a couple months ago now, there was fear that means is the water valve turning off for Arizona. In reality, that was an 18% reduction to Arizona, but predominantly for areas outside of Maricopa County. So it was not affecting Maricopa County, number one. But two, it's important that we're not resting on our laurels. We obviously are very focused on scarcity management practices. And again, I give Governor Ducey a lot of credit for this. Is probably 4 years ago, he put together a water augmentation council that I served on, working with farmers, working with the Bureau of Reclamation and many organizations to advance augmentation practices. So no one sees that behind the scenes, but water is the lifeblood of this community, and we're going to continue to ensure that we have the requisite resources needed for our growth.
All right, Chris, another question coming in live for you. This is regarding TSMC. Is much of the supply chain pipeline looking at opening up operations mainly on the TSMC campus, or are they looking to other areas in the valley?
Yeah, we've been fortunate with Peter's leadership at TSMC. A lot of their key suppliers, and some that are sole source to TSMC, and then others that jointly serve the broader semiconductor market, they are looking really all across the state. So there's 40 plus companies that are evaluating the Metro Phoenix market as we speak. Of the 300 total, 40 plus are in the semiconductor supply chain. So, we have, as I mentioned in my introduction, new commerce parks being developed all around the region. And so, yes, the supplier campus in North Phoenix, that's close proximity to TSMC's campus, but we're seeing, a lot of these chemical packaging and other companies look up and down I-10, looking on the southwest side, all around the region. So you wouldn't be surprised, I'd say in 2 years from now, if we have, more than a dozen or 2 dozen companies further supporting the semiconductor foundries in the market. And I think they'll be spread all around throughout the region and around the state, which would be a good thing for everyone here.
All right, Peter, on that note, question for you here, kind of abroad, but I think you'll like it. What concerns or excites you about the semiconductor industry in the near future?
Well, there's so much opportunity, and it's gone so well in Phoenix. That creates a different type of footprint for us. We're closer to our customers. 75% of our customers are US players. They're NVIDIA, they're Qualcomm, they're household names. And given the increased demand, by expanding our capacity domestically, we're closer to them and they're serving American consumers. And so the alignment and the collaboration and cooperation between the state and the city and the feds has been perfect to date. And that is exciting. No missteps, no problems. And so we feel real comfortable. It's not easy. We're careful. We're incremental. We go step by step, as Ed would know. Ed sounds like he's got a long history with us. We don't make mistakes. And we specialize on the leading edge, in terms of speed, performance, functionality, scalability, thermal energy efficiency. The 543 nanometer chips are what we do best. And so what Phoenix has done has opened the door for us to expand in a very, very nice way. And bottom line, our investment, it'll create jobs. That's the most, Intel does a great job of this. We're going to do this. We'll create 2,000 new jobs. That's 1.5 billion in new income. And then Chris was talking about the suppliers. There are dozens of them, some that have announced CCP, LCY, Air Liquide is a bulk hydrogen player. It's a very complex ecosystem. They're coming with us. They're creating jobs. They're creating new personal income in that city and in that state. And that's good. That's great for Arizona, and it's great for TSMC.
All right. Well, you just talked about jobs, and I think it was you, Peter, who talked about keeping the ASU bumper stickers in Maricopa County. And so, Angela, question coming in for you and regarding Intel here. How is the mix of non-college degree versus college degree workforce changing on the floor of the new plants?
Well, it's actually changing quite a bit. I mean, it used to be at a point where we required everyone to have a bachelor's degree. Now we're kind of taking a little bit of a different approach and looking at talents. We're going to look at everything from our veterans, and we're going to look towards more females in technician programs. But it's the role the educational institutions are playing in our success is just absolutely tremendous. Peter touched on it. We hire from our local universities and our community colleges. They're a huge focus for us. Like Peter at TSMC, we want to see those ASU bumper stickers and U of A bumper stickers in our parking lot as well. ASU has the largest engineering school in the country. So we plan on recruiting heavily from ASU, U of A, Grand Canyon, all of our public universities. We really look forward to that because there's a lot of tremendous talent there. But we're also looking at additional programs. We're working closely with the Maricopa Community College District on 2 different programs. One, the first in the country, which is an AI associate's degree program. And that's being, you can pursue that at Chandler Gilbert Community College and or Estrella Mountain Community College. So we're looking at a lot of innovative programs so that when we're hiring for our technicians, we also can supplement that talent of the engineers as well.
And Angela, you had a specific question come in, and we've touched on this a little bit throughout today's webinar, but with the news of Intel breaking ground on 2 new leading edge chip factories at the company's campus in Chandler, what led the company to investing in the region?
Well, I'm really glad you asked that question because I think Peter touched on a lot of it. You know, you have a really good mix here of a strong business climate. I mean, we're excited here because it's just a very it's a great time to be in Arizona. We have a strong talent pipeline, and we have been able to take on things in Arizona that we wouldn't be able to take on in other states. So it's just strong, vibrant community with a solid talent pipeline and innovative leadership. So it's been an exciting time to be in Arizona, and it's because of that legacy of advanced manufacturing and the growth of the technology sector that we have the ability to grow and expand. So we're looking forward to that. We appreciate ACA and GPEC and the city of Chandler and Maricopa County. You've been big partners of ours, and you've built a business climate that's conducive to our expansion. So we're very grateful.
Thank you for that. Ed, question for you coming in. A lot of local leaders on this call right now. What should local leaders be doing to help secure Greater Phoenix's future semiconductor manufacturing competitiveness?
Yeah, that's a great question, Chris. So I think it starts with what I call true collaboration, right? Involvement, engagement to support the common cause. You know, we need to support it as a metropolitan area, as a state, via GPEC, via other efforts as well. And we need to engage, you know, the university system, as we mentioned, all of us I heard talk about that, and as well as the community college network to develop the appropriate skill sets. So we have to have the talent. You know, Chris showed us the slide up front. I think behind Portland and Silicon Valley itself, we're closing the gap on a number of employees employed in this industry here in the Greater Phoenix area. And as these 2 new fabs in Chandler at Intel ramp, and similar fashion, we have the ramps in north end of Phoenix up there. There's going to be plenty of opportunity, but we need to develop, and we all need to work together. And it takes true collaboration to achieve that.
I love that segue to sort of wrap us up here. Great perspective, great dialogue on the discussion today. Ed, anything you'd like to add? We're going to give each one of the panelists an opportunity here after sort of listening to everything we've talked about today to give your thoughts on where we are now and where we're going. And I know you did a great job kind of doing that just now.
No, I think it's just, you know, it's a tremendous industry. Chris mentioned it up front behind crude oil, processed oil, and cars. Semiconductors is number 4 in the world today. All the future elements of our lives, including healthcare, are tied to semiconductors. It's really been pervasive into all elements of our lives. It's not going to stop. It seemed to accelerate during the pandemic. And thus we see a demand, a strong demand, and actually some shortages somewhere. But it takes all of us working together as not just suppliers to the industry, but the actual people that lead in the industry, like we have on the discussion with us today, and the commitment from, you know, the supply bases. I know that we all want to walk lockstep with our customers and fuel that growth. And I think the important element is localization. In fact, what I stress to our team internally at EMD Electronics and Merck KGaA is we want to embrace globalization, which is be a global company, but be a local company at the same time. So globalization, very important, and tremendous opportunity and runway in front of us. Like I said, I haven't seen this in my 35-year career in this business. So I think it's opportunity rich, but we need to act with urgency and aggressively. And I think it'll be a nice story at the end of the day to tell.
Well, appreciate that, Ed. Okay, let's go, Peter. Let's bring you in now. Some final thoughts. A lot of optimism coming off of what Ed just talked about.
Right, he nailed it. I agree with what Ed had to say. Semiconductors are the hardest thing on planet Earth to make. Putting 15, 20 billion transistors on a piece of silicon the size of your fingernail is a hard thing to do. And what Phoenix has done is created the circumstances and an environment that is very, very welcoming. The officials there, GPEC, ACA, have done a tremendous job. So the business, I'm not sure who's watching here, but the business community should be thankful because the catalytic impact of companies like Intel and TSMC and NXP and others on jobs and on incomes and on local economic development is tremendous, and Phoenix is a good place to be. And we're very, very thankful in terms of how we've been treated the last few years in Phoenix.
Thanks for that, Peter. Angela at Intel, anything you want to add as we close out?
I would just wrap up by saying that America's share of domestically produced semiconductors has declined, as Chris mentioned earlier, and I think it's an area of significant importance to our industry. Funding the CHIPS Act would be incredible for Intel and other companies. So I think that's something we all need to pay attention to. But Arizona's got such a strong business climate. We're just happy that we could expand here and continue to grow and support all of our communities.
Thanks, Angela. And Chris, you kicked us off, so bring us home here.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. Well, certainly we're unapologetic in our approach of positioning Greater Phoenix to become the top global hub for semiconductors. And that's really a moonshot expectation that we have. But we do believe it's attainable and achievable. And to everyone's points that were made, it does take a community coming together to collaborate. And yet, we have to be very intentional going forward. So what GPEC's going to do, and along with our partners at ACA and the governor, our mayors, our supervisors, I will tell you, the semiconductor conversations we have with them are very similar in intellect to what was exchanged today. They understand the roadmap that's required, the infrastructure investments that are required, the education investments that are required. If we want to compete in the global economy, we need some help from the feds and Congress, certainly. But to the point about that Ed made, localization, this is a newer phenomenon. Companies are thinking about their image, they're thinking about their corporate social responsibility. They're certainly thinking about their environmental commitments. All those things being tied in one, Greater Phoenix has a chance to put itself in the leadership position as a beacon of advancement in this sector. And so we're going to grab onto that and take this ride with many of you that are on the line here today. And I'm just really elated and humbled to have the chance to work with all of your corporations for all the good you're doing for the citizens here in Arizona. So thanks again for everybody's time, and my hat's off to each of you for joining us today.